Alright, in this video I'm going to check the gauges on the rally dash that I plan to put into my 72 Dodge Charger. So here is the dash, the back side of the dash, and how I'm going to check it is I bought this guy from Amazon, and it's basically a power supply. So we've got our connectors here, negative terminal, positive terminal, there's a ground we don't really need to use, turning the power on here, and then we have voltage adjustment, amperage, wattage, which we don't really need to worry about. You click this button here, output, to basically supply power to the terminals. Most of these gauges, I believe, work off of 5 volts or so. So we don't want to put 12 volts to this stuff. I don't think it'll hurt it to do it for a second, but you know, since we have control over the voltage here, I'm just going to set that to 5 volts, and we want to just see if the gauge basically moves. For example, this guy down here is the oil pressure gauge. Okay, hooked up. What I'm going to do is hit this button to turn on the power. I'll put the camera here so you can see it when I turn the power on. Not working, so I'm getting nothing. So I think maybe that guy is no good. All right, now I'm going to move the terminal up here, or the terminals up here, to the fuel gauge. All right, now I'm going to turn the output on. See it moving? Turn the output off. So that one is working, so that gauge is good. And let's switch over to, what do we got? Temperature. Okay. And let's watch the temperature gauge. Output on. And it's moving. So that gauge is working. I kind of don't care about the alternator gauge because I always bypass this guy. But let's just see if it works. We'll put the power terminals up here. Output on. And it moved. So that guy's working. Alright, so those two work. Fuel works. Oil does not work. And then the clock. And turning output on. Nothing's happening. Trying to increase the power, but nothing's really changing. Anyway, I don't think this guy's working. Obviously it's not moving, so that's that. Alright, so the oil pressure gauge is not moving, it's not working. But just to make sure I'm not missing something, I'm going to test a different cluster. It's oil pressure gauge. Hopefully it works, so we can see that I'm not missing something and that I'm doing it correctly. So this cluster, it's either out of a 69 or 70 Dodge Charger. The oil pressure gauge is this one right here. So these two guys. And turn on my power supply. We're set to just under 5 volts. And I'm going to power on now. Okay, so oil pressure gauge is working on this one. Turned it off. Let's just check all the gauges on this guy since we got it out. Here's the amp meter gauge, which I pretty much always disable anyway, but let's just see if it works. Did it move? Yeah, moved. That one works. Move over to the temperature gauge. Turning on now. Alright, that guy's working. Fuel gauge. Fuel gauge is not working. Let's see. Right up to 12 volts just to double check, but looks like it's not working. Yeah, so I'm going to hook this back up to the gauge next to it, which is the temperature gauge. So you see what happens when I turn it on. You see you're getting some amperage. So the thing is, you know, basically it's consuming some juice. but when the gauge doesn't work and you turn this on, it just goes to 0, so there's no flow of electricity. All right, back to the early B body. So last thing to check is the clock. Okay, whatever that is, it's not doing anything. No flow. Anyway, we verified all of these gauges work on this dash. We verified you just put some power. Again, always keep this to 5 volts because it goes through a volt reduction, which I believe is here, coming into the system. So all the gauges run off of 5 volts, not 12 volts. So make sure you either have a resistor before you have a 12 volt going in to drop it to 5 volts, or you use something like this, a power supply, where you can actually adjust the voltage. So let me go put this back. Let me see if I can find another one, and let's see if we can find a clock that works. This is the cluster of my 70 Dodge Charger that unfortunately burned to the ground. Probably the car I've loved more than any other car. No, it's all locked up too. Doesn't work. All zeros. Since it's here, let's just check these guys too. That one doesn't work. That one doesn't work. That one doesn't work. I guess the fire probably ruined all of everything, huh? So none of these work. Neither does the clock. We got a standard dash out of a 68 to 70B body, which has a clock. Let's see if it works. No. Changing the time doesn't work. Great. That wasn't supposed to happen. Well, that clock doesn't work. Let's check the temperature. Temp gauge works. That's cool. And now the alternator. No. Alternator doesn't work. Yeah, it does. Cool. That one works. So check this out. We've got 12 volts, 15 volts. We got about 12 volts going to the clock. You see how we get some amperage here? Tells me there's electricity going through here and this is working, but it's corroded or something, or just jammed up enough. But if I put my finger in here, give it a little pressure, listen to this. It's almost going on its own. When the fan shuts off of the power supply, you can hear the clicking. And I can feel it pulsating on my finger, but the second I let it go, it doesn't, you can't overcome the corrosion on it or dry grease or whatever is keeping it from spinning freely. Anyway, I shot some WD-40 down in there. We'll see if it helps. Give that a little more time.